Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about something really foundational in contraception, barrier methods. Now, they might seem super simple on the surface, but as you'll see, the little details, well, they make all the difference. All right, let's jump right in. Hey, and welcome to MediByte. So, when you think about contraception, you've probably heard of a ton of different options, right? There are pills, patches, IUDs, the list goes on. But today, we're going to zero in on one specific group that works on a really simple, direct idea, just creating a physical block.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll define what barrier methods even are. Then we'll take a tour of all your different options. After that, we're going to tackle something called perfect versus typical use, and trust me, this is so important for understanding how well they actually work. We'll also talk about a pretty unique benefit that goes beyond just pregnancy. And then we'll wrap it all up with how to think about choosing what's right for you.
All right, first things first. What do we actually mean when we say barrier methods? I mean, honestly, the name kind of gives it away. You can think of them as the physical front line of defense. So at the end of the day, barrier contraceptives are all about creating a physical wall. Their one and only job is to be a kind of gatekeeper, literally stopping sperm from getting into the uterus. And if they can't get in, well, that's the first step to preventing a pregnancy. And how they work? It's actually super simple. Sperm enters the vagina, but then it runs into a roadblock. The barrier method physically blocks the cervix, which is the doorway to the uterus. If the sperm can't get through that door, they can't meet an egg. Simple as that. No meeting, no pregnancy. Okay, so we get the basic idea, but what are the actual options out there? You might be surprised that there's more than just one or two types. And of course, we have to start with the big one, the most well-known barrier method in the world, the condom. Super available. And it comes in both external, what we used to call male condoms, and internal or female versions. But as we're about to see, not all condoms are the same. Okay, and this is where you really need to pay attention, because the material a condom is made of completely changes the kind of protection you get. Latex condoms, they give you the best defense against all sorts of STIs, both bacterial and viral. Synthetics offer some protection, but they can be a bit more likely to break. But here's the really critical part. Lambskin condoms do not protect you from viruses like HPV or HIV. That is a massive, massive difference. Moving on, we've got a couple of options that you insert internally to cover the cervix, the diaphragm and the cervical cap. So a diaphragm is this flexible, dome-shaped cup that you place over your cervix. The big thing to know about the diaphragm is that you need to get it fitted by a healthcare professional. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. The cervical cap is pretty similar, just smaller, but its main draw is the timing. You can actually put it in up to 40 hours ahead of time, which allows for a little more spontaneity. And for our third group, we're looking at things you can usually grab right off the shelf at a pharmacy. These work with a physical block, a chemical reaction, or sometimes a mix of both. So you've got the contraceptive sponge, which works for 24 hours, but it's really important to know that it's quite a bit less effective for women who've had a baby. Then there's contraceptive gel. This one's interesting. It doesn't kill sperm, it just changes the pH down there so they can't swim. It's definitely best used with another barrier method. And finally, there's spermicide, which is a chemical that kills sperm on contact. Just a heads up, using it a lot can sometimes cause some irritation. Okay, this next part is maybe one of the most important things to understand about any of these user-dependent methods. We have to talk about the difference between perfect use and typical use. Think of perfect use as, well, perfect. It's the in a lab scenario where you follow the instructions to the letter every single time, no mistakes. But typical use, that's the real world. It's what happens when you account for, human error. Maybe you use it wrong, or you just forget to use it sometimes. And for barrier methods, the gap between these two can be pretty big. And this chart really just says it all. Take the contraceptive gel, for example. If you use it perfectly, about 7% of women might get pregnant over a year. But with typical real-world use, look at that jump. It doubles to 14%. That is a massive difference, and it just shows how important it is to use these methods correctly and consistently. So we've been talking a lot about pregnancy prevention, right? That's the main point. But there's another huge benefit we absolutely have to cover, something that one of these methods offers that goes way beyond just contraception. And folks, if you take one thing away from this whole explainer, let it be this. The MSD manual states it so clearly. Out of all the birth control methods out there, only one type gives you broad protection against sexually transmitted infections, and that is the latex condom. And we're talking about serious protection here. Protection against bacterial infections like gonorrhea and syphilis, and also really serious viruses like HPV, which can lead to cancer. And, of course, HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. This kind of dual protection is something no other barrier method can offer. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. The big question now is, how do you sort through all this and figure out what's actually the best fit for you? Let's try to pull it all together. When you're thinking about a barrier method, it's a good idea to ask yourself some questions. First off, do you need that dual protection for both pregnancy and STIs? How big a deal is convenience and ease of use for you? Are you okay with a method that means a trip to the doctor, like getting fitted for a diaphragm? And, is your partner on board? Just thinking through these things can really help you start to narrow down your options. At the end of the day, it all boils down to one simple question. What are the factors that matter most for you, for your body, and for your health? And because this is so personal, the single best thing you can do is have an open conversation with a doctor or another healthcare professional. They can help you weigh all the pros and cons based on your unique situation and help you land on a choice that you feel really good about. Whew. All right, I really hope this deep dive into barrier contraceptives was helpful for you. If you learned something new today, do me a favor and hit that like button and maybe share it with a friend who'd find it useful. And of course, make sure you subscribe to MediByte so you don't miss out on our next explainer. Thanks so much for joining us.